Hello and welcome to Andy's Bet Club. Together with me, Joe Walker, we're going to be putting together a bet builder for this Sunday afternoon's game between Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester City. And joining me to do that from Andy's Bet Club, their expert team. Hello to Robin. How you doing, Robin?
Yeah, I'm very good, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Very good to have you. And hello to Rob. How you doing, Rob?
Hey guys, very, very happy to be here. Looking forward to getting stuck into this one.
Yeah, a really interesting game this weekend because similar results in the week and in that crazy conclusion to the UEFA Champions League phase. But, you know, Tottenham Hotspur looking a lot better in Europe. And, I mean, Robin Solanke after that game said it was important that they transferred that form, those performances to the Premier League. But as a sort of next test to do that, Manchester City is probably one of the tougher attempts to do that in their current form.
Yeah, for sure. And particularly since we've seen Erling Haaland start getting back on the goal trail for Manchester City, because in recent weeks he's been so quiet, even in terms of his shots and shots on target, which are normally markets you expect him to be an absolute banker on. It's just not been there. So he scored in midweek, so that's really worrying for Spurs, whose form, as you mentioned, has been really pretty lamentable. Not just lately, but you know, as a season as a whole under Thomas Frank, it's been very poor, and there's no real sign of it getting too much better apart from those European games. I think it's 2 wins in the last 8. So, yeah, Spurs really need to kick on, like Solanke said. But as you mentioned, this is such a tough one.
And Rob, this is peak season for Manchester City, getting into gear in title run-ins. They've made some reinforcements again in January. Mark Gay, quite a interesting purchase for sure.
I think it's an interesting one because I think you're right. Like, nobody wants to be facing Manchester City in the current situation that Spurs found themselves in. But it's a strange one because Spurs historically seem to just really excel in this fixture. I think they're unbeaten in 4 of the last 5 meetings, and they've just, in whatever way, have seemed to find an edge over Pep's side, kind of regardless almost of who's been in charge at times. You know, even Frank led them to a victory earlier in the season, but I think my massive concern for Spurs at the moment is that home form.
Yeah, big question marks about their home form, their general form all season, and of course they're struggling with depth as well. But given, as you said, their historic record against Manchester City, there's possibly some value in the markets for this game, which makes very well for a bet builder that we're going to put together right now. So between us, we've got 4 picks to put together for this bet builder. Let's get straight into it. Robin, what do you think our first pick should be?
So our first pick is going to be Matheus Nunes to commit 1 or more fouls. Now, Nunes isn't necessarily a player who you would associate with committing a huge amount of fouls. He's only committed 0.54 in the Premier League this season, but he has committed at least 1 in 7 of his last 11 appearances across all competitions. And he's also been booked in 3 of his last 5 games as well. So, you know, this is somebody who's not necessarily completely at home playing right back. That's where he's going to play in this game. And the really key thing here, I think, is the fact that he is head-to-head against Xavi Simons, who is one of the most prolific foul winners in the Premier League at the moment. He's won 2 free kicks in 5 of his last 6 Premier League games and 9 of his last 10 overall. And the exception in that run was against Liverpool when he went off after 32 minutes. In addition to that, he's also been fouled at least once in 10 of his 12 Premier League starts going back to the beginning of the season. He's received 50 or more passes in each of the last 2 games, which is a huge volume of passes. So I think he is going to test Nunes, and I think it's inevitable at some stage the defender is going to make a foul, because Xavi Simons is somebody who just, he'll be direct, he'll take him on, and he'll win a foul at some point, I'm sure.
I think, sorry, Joe, I think just a point you made there, Robin, about Nunes being a little bit uncomfortable. I saw a stat the other day that I believe that Manchester City conceding goals from the left wing is the single most conceded to position if any team in the Premier League this season, in terms of a percentage of one position against them. So I think that really kind of shows that as strong as they can be, that there is quite a glaring weakness there. So although you said, you know, maybe the foul numbers don't necessarily scream to you, he's clearly struggling.
Yeah, and you think any Tottenham manager or staff or scout, knowing their stuff, will be zoning in right on that. And as you say, even if it is only on average just over a foul every other game, I imagine Manchester City at home would, or Tottenham against Man City would be the every other game that he's likely to commit that foul, let's be honest. So, yeah, I like that one to start with. Let's put that right now. Matheus Nunes to commit at least one foul, which is at 1.4. Rob, I'll put you forward for the next one.
Yeah, I'm going for the new man, Antoine Semenyo, one shot on target. Quite difficult sometimes to get a bit of any feeling of value in Manchester City games when it comes to shots on target. As we've said before, you'll be looking at Haaland at 1 to 10 most games or something like that. But I think 1.5, so 1 to 2 for Semenyo is quite solid. He's come in, this has landed 3 of his 4 games already. Granted, one of them was against Exeter, but his only blank was in that pretty disappointing defeat to Manchester United. His consistency is pretty remarkable through the Premier League this season. 18 out of 22 games this has landed, averaging 1.35 shots on target per 90 during his time at Bournemouth. And I think a nice little addition is that this has landed in, he's played Spurs already twice this season whilst at Bournemouth, and this has landed in both games. And he scored in one of those, which was only a few weeks ago, I think 7th of Jan, they met, and he was on the score sheet there. I think another element with it, that obviously we've got the super sub covering it, but I think in a team that's so well associated with kind of minutes risks, and in this world of FPL kind of infiltrating our minds for every decision, but I think he's probably one of the lowest you can get in the Manchester City team right now. Pep's obviously a massive fan, brought him in, and also he wasn't registered for the Champions League, so he hasn't played midweek at a time when City staff and Pep are complaining that the players are very tired. He said Haaland's exhausted. So I think you've got a little bit of kind of security there with Semenyo, which is just a nice little advantage to have.
Yeah, and Robbie, I think that Bournemouth Spurs game that you referenced, I think was his final appearance for Bournemouth as well. I think that was the one with the late winner.
That sounds right, when he scored in the last minute, the dramatic winner. And, we're talking about City here, but Spurs aren't very solid defensively at all. They've conceded at least 2 goals in 4 of their last 6. So we're not looking at a particularly solid team he's up against. This isn't an Arsenal that are hardly conceding any shots on target. So I think this is looking good to me.
And this is a Spurs side that have failed to beat Wolves at home. They drew with Burnley the other week, and it's just, if you're Manchester City, regardless of what's been going on domestically, and after that United result, you still got to fancy your chances, don't you?
I think so. I think Antoine Semenyo, Spurs seem like one of those teams that he's got a bit of a number on at the moment. So let's put him in for at least one shot on target into the bet builder. Let's look at Spurs now, though, Robin, and a player you've mentioned already. He's going to have some impact, not just in terms of the Nunez selection, but there's something else that you guys have wanted to put forward as well about Xavi Simons.
Yeah, our next selection is Xavi Simons to have 2 or more shots, which is available at 1.67. Now, we've already spoken about Xavi Simons, about the impact that he can potentially have in this match against Matheus Nunes. There's a clear weakness there. We know that he's probably going to see a lot of the ball, and Rob's just thrown in that brilliant stat, which I dearly hope is accurate, about City being so vulnerable down that flank. And although Xavi Simons isn't a particularly prolific scorer, he is a prolific shooter of the ball. So only Richarlison has had more shots for Spurs this season across all competitions. So Xavi Simons has had 42, which works out at 2.08 per 90. It's not quite as high as that in the Premier League, but there is signs that he is picking up in terms of his trajectory and becoming increasingly dangerous. He's had 15 shots across his last 5 matches, which has included at least 2 in each game. And he's hit the target in 4 of his last 5, which is on offer at 1.9. If you fancy something a little bit more adventurous, and based on what Rob said, that might well be worth having a wee pop at. Equally, let's talk about City's defence. They've not been particularly solid in recent weeks. They've given up at least 10 shots in their last 3 matches against Premier League opponents, and that compares to a season average of 9.35. And last week, Wolves, who are the second lowest shooters in the whole of the Premier League across the season, managed 11. So I just think it's all adding up to being a really interesting weekend for Xavi Simons, and I'm backing him to come good here again.
I'm glad you mentioned that Wolves game, Robin, because I was surprised at just how much Wolves had in terms of going at City, and then particularly towards the end there was that crazy melee of bodies with Gay and O'Reilly sort of blocking shots late on. While they have made signings and that will strengthen Rob, I imagine that is going to take some time, though, even by City standards.
Yeah, it's one of those. I think Pep's kind of made a move this season to bring in kind of a new style of player. I think teams had, I don't want to say had started to figure City out, but the reliance on heavy possession and cutting teams apart that way, whereas he's brought in these ball carriers, these kind of 1v1 really dominant players that Semenyo is that similar build. He's got a lot more out of Doku this year than they have in the past, and even signings like Reinders to kind of progress the ball like further up the pitch.
On that City point, actually, now we've got one more selection to make on this bet builder about City and ball carriers and some of those kind of tenacious dribblers that are in the City team and doing well this season. Perhaps for our final selection, let's look at maybe the indiscipline at Tottenham, and that might struggle with that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because I think you automatically associate Spurs with cards over these last couple of seasons. Just the number of players in that team that you could pick out for a card. I almost find it's hard to pick a card bet on a Tottenham game because there's no way you can cover all your bases. You've got Romero, Bentancur, Basuma, even someone like Sarr, Udogie when he plays, Pedro Porro's another one. Like, just everywhere. Then they've gone and signed Conor Gallagher, who I think for a couple of years was my kind of go-to card and foul selection. But yeah, Spurs overall averaging 2.7 cards a game, 3.27 when they're playing at home. So it's getting even worse in tandem with that poor home form as well. So we're looking at 1.3 for 2+ Tottenham cards, which I think, given those numbers, it's landed in 91% of their home games and 82% overall. So the consistency is remarkable. And I've gone back as far as I can get through head-to-heads with these two. There was 4 cards for Spurs in the win at the Etihad earlier in the season, but this selection hasn't failed to land in any of the last 16 times that they've met each other. There is kind of a strange, I don't want to say strange, but there's a bit of a needle between these two. It feels like maybe it's the fact that Spurs have had success over City in recent years. Yeah,
crazy. And especially if City start to run away with this game, you could imagine those cards totting up. Tottenham seen that side that react badly to those kind of perils in home games. So pretty self-explanatory. I think that's cemented. Let's lock those 4 in, right? So that's Matheus Nunes to commit 1+ foul, Antoine Semenyo at least 1 shot on target, Xavi Simons to have at least 2 shots, and Tottenham to have 2+ yellow cards. So that 4-leg bet builder is combined odds of 4.81, just shy of 4-1. And we are backing it on Paddy Power. And you can follow us in by clicking the link in the show description. That will take you to Andy's Bet Club website, and it will help you put that bet on through Paddy Power. Players must be 18 or over, and please gamble responsibly. And of course, on that Andy's Bet Club website, if you don't want to follow us in on this bet builder, or you want to try something a little bit more tailored to your personal taste, there is an amazing free bet builder tool on that website, andysbetclub.co.uk/bet-builder. Right, it's almost time. I've been Joe Walker. Big thanks to you, listener, for joining us. And a big thank you to my Andy's Bet Club experts. Thank you, Robin.
Pleasure, mate.
And thank you, Rob.
Cheers, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Join us next time for Tottenham's next game in the Premier League after City. They're going to the red half of Manchester, Old Trafford, next week. We'll be previewing that on our next episode. Make sure you subscribe to this on your favourite podcast platform so you don't miss it. But until then, good luck and goodbye.